We've told you about the evil plans the suspects, had behind the Boston bombing. So what's next for the suspect? Well, he's alive and in the hospital. We've assembled our primetime power panel to get to the bottom of this. We welcome Gretchen von Helms, who's a criminal defense attorney, and Annalise Getz, who's attorney at law, and they've been following this case very closely, both of you, and have insight of what actually happens next.
Well, actually, he's been charged in U.S. District Court, which is federal court in Massachusetts. And what that means is that's what starts our process of justice going. It's due process. He's entitled to the same constitutional protections that all citizens and people who are arrested in the United States are entitled to. And that's what starts the case, is that criminal complaint.
But didn't he also start confessing without the Miranda rights being?
There was an issue out of the gate, and we didn't have a whole lot of information at that point in time as to whether he was going to be charged as an enemy combatant, if we were going to use the public safety exception, or if he'd be read his Miranda rights. And as it turns out, as we collected more information, it sounds like while the community thought that he was purely being held under the public safety exception, he might have just been unconscious for about the first 24 hours of it, but he has since, as our criminal justice system requires, had the Miranda rights read to him. He's had his charges laid against him, as Gretchen said, in federal court, which is important because that means in federal charges, because that means we have the death penalty. But there was a discussion over whether we'd use the enemy combatant status.
And that being said, death penalty, we've been showing media video of the mother sobbing, just saying she feels dead. She just doesn't want him to have the death penalty. She doesn't care what happens, and upset that her other son was killed. She was, saying that the other son shouldn't have been killed at all, that we should have taken him prisoner. So is that going to have any weight on any ruling, do you think?
Well, the mother's emotional well-being doesn't usually have a weight in the ruling of the courts because they follow what the laws are.
Correct.
But if when you get past the guilt or innocence stage, and then you're working on what a sentence should be, death or life in this case, because
that's what I'm talking about.
There are mitigating factors that a court must consider on whether or not the death penalty should be imposed, and some of those mitigating factors are present here. You had hundreds of people, friends and relatives, say, "Oh my gosh, this is a shock. I can't believe this happened." In fact, the mother is expressing that shock. She may not articulate it very well, but she's expressing shock that her precious children could have been involved in something like this, and is reacting in disbelief, which is probably pretty typical for how a mother would react given this overwhelming charges and the shock that these could be her children involved.
Well, she's seen all this from another country,
right,
too.
But will there be a jury? I'm just saying, will it weigh heavy on the emotional side of a jury at some point?
It might. Jurors do consider how the children were brought up, what kind of factors were present, and in this particular case, this is the younger brother. He's 19.
He's 19. He's still a baby.
Child. He's still a baby.
Well,
legally
he's a man.
Right, legally he's a man, but emotionally he was very young. He was talking about girls and partying and this sort of thing. So his emotional maturity wasn't there, I think, clearly from the aspects of his friends.
Yeah, they could even go into science how the frontal cortex isn't fully developed at 19 for men.
But I think that yes, he is 19 years old, and we all, I'm sure, did some pretty ridiculous things when we were 19, but we did not set off bombs in public areas. And while I think the mother having this emotional reaction, which any mother is going to have, she just lost one son, another son is basically in pretty rough condition, and his life ahead doesn't look too good for him. But I mean, look at all the victims' parents,
right?
And those
that's what they're going to need to do, is bring that.
That may pull on the heartstrings, but you know what's going to pull on the heartstrings a whole lot more is the parents of that 8-year-old that lost their child.
And those would be considered aggravating circumstances. So what the jury and the judge makes rulings is they have, what are the aggravating circumstances? Clearly those are aggravating circumstances. And what are the mitigating circumstances? And then they're balanced to see whether this person should be given the death penalty or not.
Well, and on top of that, you saw the history of this woman, felony charges, right? Yeah. Hello, apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. What kind of example have you been for your kids? Jeez.
But I mean, what felony charges of shoplifting, I think, are
I don't
obviously
care.
so different
No,
from what these
obviously,
kids are
right.
being accused,
I
from what
agree.
these adults are being accused of. But I think that,
And I'm not saying it is.
yeah, but question whether they respect the law,
I've always
right?
said, exactly.
Yes.
Humans, law, I mean.
I think that it's when this whole thing first broke and everyone was talking about, is he going to be the enemy combatant? Are we going to have the public safety exception? I think it's important that the entire world was watching, and we in America hold ourselves out as the model criminal justice system for other people to follow. A lot of other citizens don't have the same rights that we do, and I am very proud of the way our country has handled it, because it's horrible what happened to us, but we are providing this person with the due process under the law. We're providing him with a right to counsel. We're giving him charges. We're doing everything above board, things that other citizens couldn't even imagine, and we're giving those rights, and the world is watching.
And a lot of Americans would say that he doesn't deserve any rights, but we're going to talk about that. But we got to take a break. So hold it, ladies. We'll be right back. It's just getting hot here in primetime. We're talking about the mother's testimony today, where you heard not really a testimony, but what she was saying on video, and how much that's going to weigh into a future jury. But let's talk about, I left off saying a lot of Americans probably feel this guy doesn't have any rights at all. They don't care that he's 19. They don't care that the mother's heart sick. They don't care. They don't want to waste taxpayer money. Talk about the system. Like it or not, let's talk about the system.
I think talking about taxpayer money and not wanting to give him his rights, as I mentioned before the break, this is a time for the United States to shine in our criminal justice system and show the world what we have. And on that note, we should talk about who he's going to have defending him. He has the public defender defending him, and he has almost the best counsel money can buy, and he's not paying for it. This woman is renowned in the legal community. She went to Harvard Law. She previously represented other terrorist suspects, including the shoe bomber from a few years back. So she has excellent expertise. She's a fantastic attorney. So he's going to have an excellent counsel by his side.
And he should have excellent counsel.
But the taxpayers are paying for that.
Well, the taxpayers pay for all indigent defense, and this person obviously he's 19, doesn't have a job, he's going to school, his parents were on welfare at some point, so he doesn't have the resources to hire counsel. And what the American justice system provides is counsel. And the federal defender offices usually have excellent attorneys working for them. They don't get paid the same as a private lawyer, but they receive a fair compensation, and that is their job, is to protect and defend the least among us, the worst that are accused. Because if they don't, our rights are in jeopardy.
Pawn scum, that's what they get to defend.
No, you don't
But
want
let's talk
a bad
about
defense attorney.
Yeah, okay. Well, we can go on and on. What's your last statement? Because we're going to have to take a break.
I want to say that I just think it's fantastic the way we've approached it. It's a horrible tragedy that happened in this country, and as opposed to using that enemy combatant status and hiding behind interrogation processes that are questionable at best, we are prosecuting him under the law. He's going to go to jail. He may lose his life over this, but it will all be done above board as the world watches.
Okay, do you guys know how, taxpayers are going to pay for this? Do you know how much this is going to cost? I mean, obviously we're not paying for the older brother, but what about this guy?
Well, the cost of the prosecution is a lot of different things. All those FBI agents, it was the tracking and finding
Just a
him.
sum, real quick, because we got to go to break. What do you think?
Huge number, million plus.
Million
Million
more than
plus.
It's going to scare you, Taylor.
Tell me.
Millions. They're going to be traveling abroad to investigate this. So
Just
it's going to
during-
be expensive.
Just during sequester time. Okay, we got to take a break. We'll be right back.